Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Fresh Outlook. I'm Logan Crawford. Back on Valentine's Day last year, Oscar Pistorius fired a gun 4 times through his bathroom door in his home. He killed his girlfriend. He called it an accident. The prosecution, however, called it murder. Take a look.
Oscar Pistorius leaves Pretoria High Court to begin his 5-year prison sentence for culpable homicide. The South African track star had been found guilty in the shooting death of his girlfriend, Riva Steenkamp. The maximum sentence was 15 years, and prosecutors had wanted 10. But Riva Steenkamp's parents left the courtroom saying justice had been done.
And is this what you were hoping for?
Not hoping for, but we are satisfied.
And Pistorius' uncle, too, Arnold Pistorius, told reporters that in his view, the judgment was reasonable.
Oscar will embrace this opportunity to pay back to society.
This is where the 27-year-old Pistorius will call home for now, the notorious Pretoria Central Prison, or CMAX, although the double amputee will serve his time in the hospital wing. Oscar Pistorius, who overcame his handicap to become a world sports icon, now faces his next great battle, trying to overcome the challenges of incarceration while paying the price for having taken a life.
And we are back on set now with the Ebru think tank, John Paitakes, a criminal justice expert from Seton Hall University, Albert Goldson from INDO Brazilian Associates, and Dr. Bart Rossi will continue our conversation. This time we are talking about Oscar Pistorius. I'm going to talk to you, John, first about this. I feel Oscar Pistorius got away with murder. Do you agree?
Well, you know, the charge was culpable homicide, which means there was some responsibility for the homicide. But I would certainly agree that he got a lesser sentence that normally people would expect. Okay, and actually, the 5 years translates down to 10 months on home supervision for the rest of the time. So, when you look at the severity of the crime, I feel that it was on the lighter end.
He was in his home. His girlfriend was supposed to be next to him in bed. She wasn't. He reached into the dresser drawer, which would have meant reaching over where she was supposed to be sleeping. Hobbled, I don't mean to be cruel, but he was on his stubs to the bathroom door, fired 4 shots through it, killed her. It just sounds more like murder than what we would call in this country a homicide or involuntary manslaughter. It seems like the judge agreed with him that it was an accident.
Yeah. Well, in the South African system or whatever, the judge acts as judge and jury, it appears, and that was her discretion. Now, a different judge sitting could have come up with some different findings. You know, did he actually plan to kill her? Well, that part is questionable. It appears that from the information I read that they had some discussions, they had some arguments, and he also has a violent emotional background that he's had a problem controlling his temper. He had an incident with a gun just several months before that, firing in a restaurant, and no charges were filed up. So, you know, he had that volatile personality, and it certainly is, you know, seems like, well, the prosecutor's talking about appealing it, so they may go for a, you know, a heavier sentence. It's not that easy, but they may, and that's what it sounds like so far. I think they had 14 days to decide whether they were going to appeal.
Exactly, and they're promising an appeal, it seems, at this point. Albert Goldson, did he get away with this? Did he get away with murder because he is handicapped?
I believe he got away with murder simply because he's a celebrity. He's known throughout the world, the sports world, and unfortunately, when you have a celebrity at a very high level, whether it be in sports or entertainment, etc., the jury, the courts, unfortunately treat them with kid gloves. And again, this is another case of violence against women. We're having the same sort of issue with the NFL today in terms of domestic violence. So when you look at these individuals, celebrities at a very high level, and of course they can afford the best lawyers possible, which enables them to get a lesser sentence. And unfortunately, that has been the case whether in this country or overseas.
And if it doesn't fit, you must acquit. We heard that during the O.J. Simpson trial. Let's turn now to Bart Rossi. From what I heard from following the trial, Doctor, everything did seem to fit, yet the judge almost did acquit. What are your thoughts on his celebrity and the fact that he might have skated because of it?
Well, I agree with you. I think that he got away with murder. I think he has a narcissistic personality. And I think personality, factor in this.
Okay, we're going to stop you right there, Doctor, simply because we're only getting every other word because of a technical difficulty. We'll hopefully try to clear that up. Let's turn now to John Paitakes. Same question.
Right.
O.J. Simpson. Many people feel he got away with murder because of his celebrity. As an investigator, does a person's status or stature impact the investigation?
Well, technically it's not supposed to. But as my cohort here indicated, and many times that does come up, and I think, and he touched upon it, what I've seen over the years, especially in this country, is that the wealthier person can afford a team of lawyers or whatever. Most of the people in prison today in this country are there because they're from the lower economic strata and they had the public defender. Now, I have the utmost respect for the public defender. They do most of the criminal cases. However, their caseloads are very high and their resources are low, whereas the private attorney can charge whatever he or she thinks is the going rate. So therefore, they can have a team of investigators. They're going to find more ways to get a lighter sentence. So I think that plays into the celebrity status. That's what usually happens,
And
what
also,
I've seen.
And also, Albert Goldson, apparently Pistorius was making payments to the family of the victim. He'd been making $550 a month in payments. Doesn't sound like a lot of money, but apparently the family is satisfied with that 5-year sentence, 10 months of which will be served. What was your take when you heard about him actually making payments to the victim's family?
Well, that's obviously shocking. It's almost an admission either of guilt or definitely an attempt to, reduce his sentence, to get definitely public sympathy. And once you get public sympathy in a very high profile situation like this, of course it will have an effect. It could be subliminal, but it's definitely an effect to help him get either a lower sentence or reduced sentence of some kind.
In the United States, if this had happened and he'd been convicted of a similar type of crime, let's say manslaughter instead of murder, he'd be facing much more time. It seems that abroad, the criminal justice system is much more lenient, where people often get home confinement, very light sentences and so forth. They believe more in rehabilitation and less in the punitive end of the criminal justice system.
Yeah, I think you're accurate. He certainly, if found guilty of a manslaughter charge, could have gotten up to 15 years or more. Now, the other big difference is that when it's a jury deciding or whatever, the outcome could have been different too. Now you have 12 people deciding, and they may not have, they may have decided on a more serious charge, okay? So that's one big difference. And the other difference is, I mean, I've worked with a number of Superior Court judges over the years, and they have different personalities. So one judge may be more sympathetic toward rehabilitation, another judge may be more punitive or whatever. It seems like she was trying to balance, she said, mercy with retribution, and it seems like she went more on the side of mercy or whatever. Now, a different judge sitting could have come out with a whole different sentence. There's a range of sentences, and there's discretion in it, and so that's part of the system.
Albert, what was your take on what happened in the courtroom during testimony and during the exhibition of evidence? Often, it seemed, Pistorius would throw up, would cry uncontrollably. Do you think this was theatrics, hysterics, calculated? What are your thoughts?
I think it's a combination of both. You have enormous pressure because the entire world is actually looking at this particular trial. And of course, given his background, his psychological instability at times, that certainly plays into it. Also, he has a very elite team of lawyers who could have coached him to perform these acts as well, and including the payments as well, which really in many countries, not in our society, but in many countries overseas, is considered blood money. Right. If there is some sort of an accident or murder, what have you, fatality, you would have one person pay the family some sort of quote-unquote reparations.
And it's interesting because the family is also dropping their civil suit against Pistorius, so perhaps some kind of deal has been struck there, although there is no information about that. Let's turn now again to Dr. Bart Rossi. The situation is cleared up with his connection. Doctor, you're listening to the conversation, his celebrity, his handicap. How does this all play into this man firing through a bathroom door, killing his beautiful girlfriend on Valentine's Day, and perhaps will serve 10 months behind bars?
Well, I agree with you, Logan. I think he did get away with murder, and I think he has a narcissistic personality. I think he's the type of person who really wants to be better than anyone else, maybe to make up for his problems and the fact that he doesn't have two legs. But I think his personality is troubled. He has a history of difficulty, as just been pointed out. And I think that maybe his girlfriend, Reva, got a good understanding of this superiority that he possesses, And maybe that was part of the conflict. But I do think he got away with this. I think he's a very troubled man psychologically. And I think there are a lot of similarities to the OJ case, since they kind of muddled the waters and presented barely enough evidence to suggest that he may not be guilty, even though I think he was.
Doctor, what do you make of his courtroom theatrics, throwing up, crying hysterically? Is it possible he killed her, meant to kill her, then felt bad when he saw the disgusting mess he left behind in his home?
I think it's a combination of that, and I think it's also a combination that he's got a really messy personality with a lot of different traits and characteristics, and he doesn't know how to control himself. So I would say some theatrics, and I would also say some real feelings and emotion about the fact that his girlfriend is deceased, and he's the reason why.
And you mentioned narcissistic personality, and we've been talking about celebrities. I'd imagine and presume, having met some and worked with some, that narcissistic personalities and celebrity go hand in hand.
Well, often they do, but many people seem to be able to contain that and deal with it and present themselves as real people. I think he has a problem in dealing with celebrity, dealing with his physical limitations, although they don't appear to most of us because he's successful. But I think he has this superiority, this air of superiority that really works against himself.
John, turning to you for just a second, do you feel in some ways our system here in the United States works better? Or is their system in South Africa, for example, better because they tend to show more mercy and compassion? The argument on the part of the defense is, what good does it do putting Oscar Pistorius behind bars? Do you feel someone like Oscar Pistorius, if he did this intentionally, does actually put society at risk?
Oh, certainly, certainly. I mean, you know, the question is what's justice, okay? And it has to be a combination of punishment and rehabilitation, all right? But again, rehabilitation is secondary on the list. The main thing is deterring somebody from committing another crime. So he did a horrendous crime. So the first thing we have to do is protect society. That's the whole goal of the correctional system, all right? So certainly, you know, that would have happened. And then there is an element of rehabilitation. There are programs in the prison, et cetera. He has to earn his way. There's different levels of low risk, medium, high, et cetera. So they'll determine over a period of time whether he's reached that level. I understand in South Africa, you become eligible for parole in half the time. Now, that's kind of unusual. In this country, or in most states, it's 1/3 the time, and then you come before a board. And I sat on a parole board for 6 years.
I'm going to hold you right there, John, just to give Albert the final word. 20 seconds left. What are your final thoughts on Oscar Pistorius?
Well, this underlines the fact that when you have celebrities or people at a very particular elite level, whether in the United States or in South Africa or any place else, unfortunately there's a double standard. And these are the people who can afford, you know, the lawyers and the support to be able to get a much lighter sentence. And it still underscores domestic violence, whether you're wealthy or whether you're poor. Unfortunately, to bring this topic to the forefront, it has to be with a high-profile personality.
And in other words, we're all equal, but some are more equal.
Exactly.
Okay, let us thank our guests now. We have Albert Goldson, president of INDO Brazilian, John Paitakes of Seton Hall University, and joining us via Skype, Dr. Bart Rossi. All interesting opinions and contributions. Thank you so much for your time. When we come back, Breaking the Bank, a look at the debt burden so many in America carry after this.